I come before you today to present our proposed 2011 balanced budget for your consideration. It is based on the input of many Chicagoans, including hundreds of people who participated in our budget hearings last month. We came together during a time of austerity, as the worst national recession in over 70 years continues to impact people, business, and every level of government in Chicago and across the nation. Yes, it has been a challenging year to put together a budget, but it was a challenging year back in 1989 when I first came into office. And many years of the years in between have been challenging too. But we have met those challenges and the city has moved forward. Well, some economists and federal agencies have recently said that the nation's recession ended in June of 2009. Now that is laughable. You and I and the people of Chicago know that far too many people continue to suffer its consequences. Tell Chicagoans who still don't have a job, are struggling to pay their mortgages or rent, that the recession is over, and they'll say you don't understand their lives. Far too many people and families are still drawing on their savings to pay their bills. Record numbers of homes are still being foreclosed, while bankruptcy, unfortunately, keeps growing. Many people are trying harder than ever to find a new or a better job. At the same time, too many Chicago businesses are still struggling to keep their doors open and succeed. While Chicago has lost thousands of jobs over the past 2 years because of the recession, thankfully, the rate of job loss has begun to slow, and some businesses are finally creating some jobs again. Still, many economists believe that a new economy will emerge from the recession and that few new jobs will be created. This only underscores that our nation has a long way to go before we get back to pre-recession employment levels. It is no wonder people are angry and uncertain about their future, and they are. And at the same time, the recession continues to impact every city and state government. For the next year in Chicago, we had projected a deficit of $650 million, a direct result of the recession, which has caused a dramatic fall in revenues, as I will discuss later. While our revenues have finally begun to increase, they are increasing very, very slowly. And we believe it will take several more years for them to return to pre-recession levels. But it's important to remember that in the middle of the worst recession in 70 years, when other cities have eliminated services and raised property taxes, Chicago has not, because we have managed prudently and creatively. We have protected our taxpayers and, of course, our quality of life. I deeply believe that we have not worked for years to better manage government and control the cost, and had we not worked day in and day out to transform our economy, create new opportunities, the recession would have been far worse in our great city. It sometimes gets overlooked, but in 1989, when I took office, Chicago was a Rust Belt city that many people had written off like many other cities. But you and I know that Chicago had promise. Together, we had the foresight to transform our economy so that today Chicago is among the top tier of cities competing for jobs of the 21st century. We have recruited the businesses of the future in technology, healthcare, financial services, and transportation. We have strengthened our core sectors in manufacturing and small business. Foreign Policy magazine recently ranked Chicago as the 6th most important city in the global economy, an acknowledgement that would have been unheard of 20 years ago. We invested in every neighborhood, turned around many of them to improve the quality of life, provide them with the infrastructure improvements that are needed to create jobs and opportunity. We have taken responsibility for educating our children so that we can build a workforce with modern skills. Our children can achieve their full potential in life. Because of our shared commitment, Chicago is a stronger city today, and neighborhood quality of life has improved, as many people acknowledge. Unfortunately, even with all the groundwork we have laid, when the recession hit, it still hit Chicago very hard. Sadly, we lost some of the jobs we worked to create, and the city experienced an immediate downturn in revenue. But we've never given up. Even during the recession, more than 100 new businesses still selected Chicago to locate in Chicago, including Miller Coors, Willis Serious Materials, and many others, bringing new jobs with them. That's a testament to the strong economic foundation we have built together. In August, I offered a long-term plan that continues to transform our economy, bring us out of the recession, a plan rooted in making Chicago even more competitive in the 21st century global economy. It is based on recruiting even more businesses of the future to every part of our city. It will grow our small businesses, create new role for Chicago in advancing manufacturing. It will work to implement until my final day in office. I will work that. We have transformed our economy. We have also worked year by year to manage government more efficiently and control spending. We brought Chicago city government into the 21st century, which I'm very proud of. We have done this with one goal in mind, to create a government that is smaller in size, but greater in performance. And that is a commitment I made to the people of Chicago when I first took office. Perhaps people have forgotten, but I inherited a government that needed to be reshaped. Together, we understood that we could manage the city better and smarter. Among our accomplishments, since I have been mayor, we have cut spending by nearly $3 billion, including almost $500 million since 2009 alone, while still providing important city services. As part of our commitment to do more with less, under the balanced budget I am presenting today, we will end next year with more than 6,600 fewer non-safety employees than when I took office. We've increasingly focused on providing essential services. In 2001, 47% of the city's employees were police and firefighters. But today, the number is up to 57%, while the remainder are non-sworn civil positions, a major shift in government. To put that into further perspective, nearly 68% of our budget is spent on public safety and emergency management, including the Office of Emergency Management and Communications. Think of that, 68% of the budget. That leaves only 32% to fund the rest of the programs: sanitation, health, housing, seniors, job training, and go on and on. We've also controlled overall spending. According to a recent story in Crane's Chicago Business, Chicago's corporate fund spending has increased by only 18.8% since I have been in office, while the average spending increases for other cities and states have increased by 58%. We have reshaped government, reduced overlapping by consolidated departments. When I took office, there were 49 city departments. 2 years ago, we consolidated the functions of 10 departments into 4 newly created ones. Under the budget I am presenting today, with additional consolidation, there will be a total of 39 departments, 10 fewer than when I took office. At the same time, we have raised property taxes as a last resort by an average of less than 1.3% a year since I have been mayor, far lower than the rate of inflation. We've implemented management improvements, including renegotiating contracts, implementing hiring freezes, reducing overtime, leveraging technology, and cutting spending across the board. As part of this commitment, I have taken a pay cut. Will continue to take one until my last day in office. Under my leadership, the city of Chicago is one of the few governments in the nation that has required furlough days of its non-union and many union employees. And many employers of our sister agencies have also taken pay cuts at my request. Out of the hundreds of city services, we have privatized only a handful: custodial services, bridge painting, curb and gutter replacement, among others. resulting in taxpayer savings of hundreds of millions of dollars. In every case, we have pursued privatization only when the private sector could outperform a service more efficiently and with greater quality. In one or two cases when privatization hasn't worked, we brought services back into government. At the same time, to protect our taxpayers from employee wrongdoing, we have implemented many reforms both to prevent and punish it. I'm proud to have appointed independent inspector generals, giving them greater authority for oversight of cities' hiring, compliance, monitoring, and investigative functions. Our offices work frequently and proactively together to investigate wrongdoing. To help prevent misconduct, we have fundamentally changed the way we hire employees to make sure the process is fair. We hope to outsource the hiring of key infrastructure employees very soon. Chicago workers must know that they have the same chance to get a city job as anyone else. We have created a new independent police review authority to investigate officers' misconduct. And our police officers have made it a priority to create new bonds with the community so that today allegations of police misconduct are lower than ever. Further, we have made government more transparent, accountable, and accessible. The millions of records we have posted online for the first time, including extensive contract payment information, contract financial disclosures, detailed information about tax increment financing funds, projects, and agreements. And to make government work better, we recently announced a new process under which businesses owned by minorities, women, and people with disabilities become certified. Has everything we've tried to accomplish gone perfectly? Of course not, as I said before. But Chicago is stronger today, and we make great progress. I've always admitted when we need to do better, and then we have done it. To give credit where credit is due, the President's economic stimulus package has also helped prevent an even worse recession in Chicago. This historic economic stimulus legislation provided Chicago and most cities with opportunities to create jobs, protect people's quality of life during these very tough economic times. Using these funds, we've already invested to create or save 11,440 jobs, and another 2,300 jobs are in the pipeline. This includes jobs in summer youth programs, construction, community service, public safety, and the environment. And I thank President Barack Obama for that legislation. Still, as I said, the nation's recession, the worst since the Great Depression, is the biggest reason we're facing major financial challenges today. Our preliminary budget deficit for next year was just over $654 million. The fact is the city experienced a decrease of more than $1 billion in revenue since the recession began. We have lost $1 billion since the recession, nearly all of which was in revenue streams that are most economically sensitive: real estate transfer tax, sales tax, and income tax. I believe that had the recession not happened today, we would be within reach of balancing in next year's budget. That's because our revenues would have continued to increase as we created new jobs, new businesses, and our economy grew. When taken together with our ongoing efforts to control the costs of government and cut spending, we would have been able to bring our budget into balance and meet our commitments very easily. Instead, at the very time we are challenged by the growing cost of personnel, our health care, salaries, and pensions, we've had to deal with the recession and, of course, a drop in revenue, which has been very significant. The problem is that the recession is lasting far longer than any economists have ever predicted. And that's why the basic question continues to be, how do we balance our budget during a time of austerity when people need basic services and support more than ever? I've always believed that when it comes to the budget, you must balance the need to be fiscally prudent with the need to provide important services to people. You must protect taxpayers who can't afford to pay more, but also understand that government can't do everything. As I said for years, there are services the private sector can better provide itself or in partnership with government. The same applies to foundations, faith-based groups, and charities. So in the balanced budget I am presenting to you today, I'm guided by the ongoing commitment for government to be more efficient and to further control its size, scope, and cost. But that is balanced by my belief that we must put a priority and find a way to invest a limited amount more on programs that make our neighborhoods safer and that help grow our economy and create new jobs and businesses. We must continue working to end the tide of violence and engulf some neighborhoods. We must get people back to work. When it comes to other programs, we will hold the line on spending. The city's basic services and other programs will continue to be provided. But this is not the time to expand government. Once again, we'll ask our departments and our employees to step up and do more with less. So how do we propose to balance the budget? Because our people and our businesses are hurting, and you know that on a personal basis in your own wards. I will not propose any increase in taxes or fines or fees next year, including property taxes. I don't believe it's a right to raise taxes when people are in the economy as bad as it is today. And you can talk to your neighbors about the economy. This will be 3 years in a row that we haven't raised property taxes. We will continue our freeze on non-safety hiring, which has been in effect since 2008. This will help us control spending and size of government and save at least $20 million next year alone. Next, we will continue our ongoing efforts to reshape government, consolidate departments to streamline and avoid duplication and reduce costs. We will consolidate Department of General Services and Graphics in order to achieve greater efficiency and cost savings. We will consolidate Department of Cultural Affairs, the Mayor's Office of Special Events, which are funded partially from the same source, have common functions. We will consolidate Department of Community Development and Zoning and Land Use Planning to place all economic development functions in one department. Further, we will require all non-union employees, starting with me, to take furlough days, unpaid holidays, result in a cut in pay of 9.2%. This step will save us $20 million next year. We hope that the unions serving the city will again agree to be part of the solution. We've had conversations with them towards that goal, which would save another $32 million for the taxpayers. We are counting on their participation and have accounted for it in this budget. Next, we will cut 277 budget positions, including 60 managers, supervisors, IT personnel, saving $13 million. We will continue to generate savings from lease renegotiations and contract reductions. We will save from locking in lower utility costs, a reduction in custodial services. There will be additional savings because of lower than expected contract costs, reduced headcount, and additional auditing. We will continue to work with Cook County and local community providers to find smarter ways to deliver health care services and to maximize the federal health care resources. In addition, in next year's budget, we will also use tax increment financing, or TIF funds, to help balance the budget. We declare a TIF fund surplus of $180 million in 25 of the 160 TIF districts across Chicago. By law, surplus TIF funds are returned to and divided up by local taxing bodies. The city's share is expected to be $38 million, which we will apply to balance the 2011 budget. We will maintain the remainder of TIF funds in the separate districts across the city to continue investing in economic growth and projects that support neighborhood job creation. It is not in Chicago's long-term interest to put a hold on economic development projects. I will not support any proposal that puts our economic future at risk. The fact is, TIFs work, have been an important part of our strategy to spur economic growth and create opportunities. TIF have created neighborhood jobs, strengthened Chicago's school system, revitalized the neighborhoods, and improved our quality of life. Public improvements like street and sidewalk repairs, parks, open space, account for nearly 1/3 of all TIF expenditures each year. For every $1 in TIF funding there has been invested in Chicago's neighborhoods, $6 have been invested by the private sector. As a direct result of TIFs, more than $7 billion in private funding has been invested all across our city. Under our TIF proposal, our Chicago public schools will be able to get a one-time infusion of $90 million to help address their budget challenges. Next, as I announced several weeks ago, we will soon send out requests for proposal to outsource some functions that may be more suitably performed by the private sector. We are seeking to outsource recycling collections, festival management, equipment maintenance, or private firms might be able to provide the services much more efficiently. If these services cannot be provided at a lower cost by the private sector, we won't enter into any agreement, as I have real concerns about charging an admission fee for the Taste of Chicago. No private sector company will own any of these services. They simply will be asked to manage them better at a cost saving to the taxpayers of Chicago. If that can't be done, common sense says they should be given the chance to do so. Now I want to discuss our asset leases. Because of our continued discipline and cost-cutting steps, we're able to borrow $60 million less from the parking meter lease funds to balance a 2010 budget than we had originally planned. We'll apply the $60 million to help balance next year's budget. Still, in the step that I know will be controversial, we will borrow an additional $120 million from the parking meter funds to balance 2011 budget. That will leave $76 million in that account. We will maintain our commitment to provide $21 million this year from the parking meter account to support our people's need, home meals for seniors, to youth job programs, and job training for ex-offenders. As the economy recovers over the next several years, the plan remains for the parking meter fund to be repaid so it is reimbursed over time. To protect the taxpayers and invest in Chicago's future, we will not use any funds from the Skyway long-term reserve account to balance next year's budget. This will leave a $500 million in that account. I know of no other city with such a reserve that would not have been possible without executing these sound and responsible asset leases. We've helped protect Chicago's future with this decision. Remember, when the agreements were negotiated, recession was not in sight. But the recession did happen. Taxpayers have been protected because these funds were available to us in government. Without them, you would be forced to raise your taxes substantially and eliminate or reduce many services that people depend upon it. And I know you couldn't do that. As we address our budget challenges, we must also talk about pensions, which people do not want to talk about pensions. Fully 80% of all the corporate budget goes to the cost of personnel, salaries, pension, and health care. So we must continue to better control these costs. An important step towards getting our pension system on a stronger financial footing for long term is to institute new benefits plan for new employees. We will seek legislation in the Springfield veto session later this year, changing the pension system for new fire and police fund employees to bring it in line with the similar changes enacted earlier this year for labor and municipal fund employees. I know our plan to balance the budget will not satisfy everyone. They'll debate whether we went too far or not too far enough, and that's fine. As mayor, my job is to protect the taxpayers, and that's what we have done. At the same time, we must do what's essential to keep our progress going. We cannot afford to fall behind or risk our future. Even as we hold the line on spending in most areas, we will invest more in a limited number of ways. First, while homicides and violent crime continue to fall in Chicago over a decade, I know that numbers don't provide much relief to anyone who has lost a family member or friend to violence or feel vulnerable to its awful grip. That's why in this budget, we'll continue to address the most immediate and pressing problem facing many of our communities: violence in our streets and in our homes. The problem is that the gangbangers and drug dealers have become more ruthless than ever. They don't care whether they cut down to further their profits, or even kill their own children. That's why our first priority remains to put more police officers on the street. Everyone knows that a greater ongoing police presence is important to the safety of all communities. Already in the past year, we have transferred 212 officers from desk jobs to street duty. Further, based on a recent assessment of CAPS program, we will reassign 111 additional officers from the CAPS program to street patrol within the next month. We've hired 314 officers in the past year and a half. And next year, I'm pleased to say we'll invest in and conduct 2 more police classes, which we believe will add between 150 and 200 new officers to the force and to street duty. When taken together with the officers we have already assigned, we will have added approximately 800 police officers to street duty in a 2-year period, a significant number. At the same time, under our budget, we will continue to invest in the strategies that are ready to reduce violence in many communities, including the department's effort to send officers to areas of greatest need. We'll implement a reinvented CAPS program that will more fully engage our neighborhoods, volunteers, and block clubs, and depend far less on police officers. We will continue to work in Springfield and Washington, D.C. to enact stronger gun laws, protect our children by enforcing the curfew, help ex-offenders turn around their lives, and, of course, fight gun trafficking across our nation and in our state. In addition to public safety, our other priorities is build a stronger economy, create a new opportunity, and get people back to work. So as part of our next year's budget, we will invest in small businesses and continue to improve neighborhood infrastructure. We will create a $2 million small business fund supported by city government and the private sector to provide loans for startups, expansions, and day-to-day operations. The unfortunate fact that there are still too many small businesses that are just days away from having to lay off more workers or close down because they cannot get a loan. Further, to help local businesses hire more people, we will substantially cut the number of employees covered by the employee's expense tax, or head tax. Last year, we announced a 2-year suspension of this tax on any new employees hired during the economic recession. In the next year's budget, we reduce the overall head tax for some employers. Under our proposal, employers will have to pay the head tax on all employees earning $4,300 per quarter, equal to the minimum wage, up from the current $900 a quarter. This will substantially reduce the head tax that employers have to pay, as an important step that will protect businesses and, we believe, help create more jobs. While it may result in small revenue loss for the city in the short term, in the long term, it will benefit our economy as more people find employment. In our budget, we will continue to invest in our job training programs so our workforce is prepared for tomorrow's jobs. In addition to our TIF funding, we will continue to invest in Chicago's infrastructure to improve the quality of life, make our neighborhoods ready to create jobs, opportunities, and welcome new businesses. Towards that goal, Chicago's $1.9 billion capital improvement program to 2011 will again invest in a broad range of important projects. These include water and sewer improvements, street resurfacing, streetscapes, street lighting, sidewalks, curb and gutter repairs, ongoing construction of new community anchors like police stations, fire stations, and libraries, and others. Remember, many cities have fallen behind because they haven't continued to invest to improve their infrastructure. Delaying these improvements only costs taxpayers more and more money in the long term. In closing, I hope you'll indulge me for just a moment and allow me to briefly reflect on my time in office. I believe Chicago is better off today than it was on the spring morning in 1989 when I first took the oath of office. I love Chicago more than you can imagine. I have spent the honor of my life to work together with you and serve the people of Chicago. Together, we have brought Chicago into the 21st century beyond our greatest expectations. We have rebuilt and strengthened and further diversified our economy. Years ago, we understood the necessity of turning around a public school system that has failed its students and taxpayers for decades. As a city, we knew that a good education is a pathway out of poverty and the greatest equalizer in our society. And today, our schools are on the path to become the best in the nation, and I believe that. Test scores continue to increase, while more students attend school and fewer are dropping out. Just as important, more and more of our students are going on to college and graduating. Our students, our teachers, our parents, our principals, especially the business community and faith-based and community leaders, deserve our thanks for they help us accomplish that. Because together we have the foresight to invest in schools, police and fire stations, libraries, parks, green spaces, housing, senior centers, along with streets, alleys, sidewalks, water mains, bridges, medians. Our neighborhoods are getting stronger. We've led the way in transforming public housing so that residents there can have a better chance at success in life. We've acted aggressively to protect homeowners from foreclosure. We've also helped build thousands of affordable housing units. We have protected the environment with a groundbreaking program that have improved our quality of life and saved tax dollars. And we managed government to protect taxpayers, even as we made it more transparent, open, and accountable. Chicago has led the way in many ways, and this day, many of our efforts in education, in the environment, in creating jobs, managing government, are emulated around the nation and around the world. But I'm also proud that together we've moved past the years when racial politics and rhetoric divided the city far too long. When I became mayor, Chicago has been called a Beirut on the lake. We're the laughing stock in the nation and around the world. They laughed at Chicago. And since then, we lowered our voices. We've raised our sights. To the credit of everyone here and past and many others, we haven't let our differences get in the way of making progress for the entire city. Chicago would not be a great city it is today, and we have not moved beyond those years. And all of us have worked together to address our city challenges. Working together, we made Chicago stronger. We have laid the foundation, hopeful, more optimistic in the future. So I want to thank you, thousands of residents and block clubs and community organizations, political, philanthropic, business leaders who worked side by side with me to make Chicago a better city. It isn't a city for one or a few, it's for many. We can't coast on our accomplishments. There is still much more to be done. And that's why for the next 7 months, I will continue to work as hard as I've had for the past 21 years for the betterment of Chicago, the city which I love. And working together, we can make Chicago move forward. I am convinced this is the best city in the nation and the best city in the world because we believe in the future, respecting the past, but the future holds greater progress for all of us. Thank you, and God bless you.